Most liked comment gets pinned. Good luck.
They need to take the deal. The owners have the advantage. And by strike, he means the players strike and they just bleed out of money and they come back to the table.
If the National Basketball Association were just 2 months away from a massive labor strike that could wipe out the entire season, it would dominate every sports headline on the planet. Every network would be in meltdown mode. ESPN would slap a flashing countdown clock across the screen. Stephen A. Smith would be fired up every morning on First Take, raising his voice about billion-dollar chaos. The sports world would feel the pressure building by the second because TV money, sponsors, and huge corporate deals would all be hanging by a thread. But right now, the WNBA is staring at that exact same cliff. A serious lockout is creeping closer. The entire 2026 season is in real danger, and yet ESPN, the biggest sports network on earth and the primary broadcast partner, is barely making a sound. No panic, no dramatic segments, just silence. Why? Because behind those polished boardroom doors, executives already know the hard truth.
2 months away from starting their season, the NBA that's in bed with Disney, ABC, ESPN, that they wouldn't tell their networks to start talking about their league to get the word out to the public of what's going on.
The WNBA players don't have real leverage in this fight. And now, former top-level sports executives are stepping forward to say what insiders have been whispering for months. The financial demands being pushed right now aren't just bold. They're disconnected from reality. Look at how strange this media blackout feels when you compare it to how the industry usually moves. When a giant network like ESPN or ABC pours hundreds of millions into a league, they normally become its biggest promoter. They hype every storyline. They protect the brand at all costs. They push narratives into the mainstream to protect ratings and keep advertisers smiling. That's how the machine works. If the NFL or NBA were anywhere near a work stoppage, the pressure campaign would be non-stop.
Quote, when the Players Association wants to say to owners, you're having expansion fees, relocation fees, you're getting a one-time signing bonus from your broadcast partners. All of those one-time events are not calculated in terms of viability of a business. And the more
analysts would debate it all day. Reporters would chase updates hourly. The networks would lean on both sides to strike a deal fast because too much money would be at risk. So when ESPN barely reacts to a possible WNBA lockout, that silence speaks loud. It shows how the corporate broadcast world truly views this situation. Their financial exposure is small. If the players walk out and cancel the season, ESPN can quietly swap those primetime slots with college softball, minor league baseball, or even poker reruns. The machine keeps rolling either way. And here's the tough part. Executives understand something the players might not want to admit. Without Caitlin Clark on the court driving huge ratings, the mainstream audience drops fast. The players may believe they're holding networks hostage, but the networks don't seem worried about the so-called ransom note. That lack of leverage changes everything. Then came the warning shot from former Major League Baseball executive David Sampson.
ownership projections indicate the union's proposal could result in approximately $460 million in cumulative losses across the life of the agreement, which continues to be the major reason why a deal still seems some distance away.
He isn't a journalist chasing clicks. He isn't a superfan. He's a longtime sports executive who ran the Miami Marlins and spent decades negotiating stadium deals and labor contracts. He knows how billionaire owners think when money and control are on the line. His message to the WNBA Players Association, who are reportedly seeking close to 30% of league revenue, was cold and direct. Take the deal. He made it clear the owners hold the advantage. If the players strike, they risk draining their own bank accounts while ownership waits them out. In his view, the math doesn't favor the union right now. Sampson pointed out what he sees as a huge flaw in the players' strategy. Yes, TV ratings jumped over the past year. Yes, attention grew. But higher viewership doesn't automatically mean ownership is desperate. The players seem to believe momentum equals power. That belief might be risky because billionaire franchise owners don't operate on emotion. They operate on long-term portfolios, cash flow strategy, and patience. Most of these owners don't depend on WNBA revenue to survive. This isn't their main source of income. It's often a side investment, a branding move, or part of a much larger sports and real estate empire. For many of them, the WNBA is a small slice of a massive financial pie. That's the part that shifts the power balance. If revenue slows for a season, many ownership groups can absorb it. They have other teams, other properties, other global assets. Waiting out a strike doesn't hit them the same way it hits players who rely on their contracts year to year. That financial cushion matters in negotiations. The players appear to believe rising visibility means the league can't afford disruption. But from the ownership side, the calculation is colder. If demands rise too quickly beyond what current revenue supports, executives may choose patience over panic. And when one side can afford to wait longer, that side usually controls the clock. That's the ruthless side of global sports business. It's not about emotion or headlines. It's about leverage, contracts, and long-term financial structure. And right now, the silence from major broadcasters suggests they don't see this as a lock the arena doors, shut off the lights, and force the players to play. That's a clear sign of a power imbalance, and it's not a good look for the league. Lock the arena doors, shut off the lights, pause operations, and wait it out. Billionaires have the cushion to sit for a season. They could even sit for several seasons if they had to. The players don't have that same safety net. Some athletes have pushed for guaranteed housing in the next collective bargaining agreement because living costs in major cities are real and heavy. In places like New York, Los Angeles, and Seattle, missing even one paycheck can hit hard. This isn't just about headlines, it's about cash flow. It's a high-stakes showdown where one side has deep reserves and the other side depends on steady income. That imbalance changes everything. But here's where things get even more intense. David Sampson didn't just talk about leverage. He broke this down from a straight business angle: basics, corporate accounting. The Players Association has pointed to big expansion fees from new teams in Toronto and Portland as proof the league is suddenly flooded with money. On social media, that number gets thrown around. It's instant fuel for higher salaries. The union sees a $200 million expansion fee and thinks, "That's league revenue. We deserve a cut." But Sampson stepped in and basically said, "Slow down. That's not how this works." Expansion fees are one-time payments. They are not recurring income. When a new ownership group pays $200 million to join the league, that money typically compensates existing owners for sharing equity. It's not steady operating revenue that repeats every season. You can't responsibly build long-term salary structures on a one-time payment. That's Business 101. Think about it. What happens in year 3 of a new labor deal when no new teams are joining? No new $200 million checks are coming in. But the larger guaranteed player, contracts negotiated off that temporary boost are still locked in. Salaries, travel costs, insurance, arena operations, those bills don't disappear. If a league uses one-time expansion money to fund recurring expenses, it creates a serious financial imbalance. Once that expansion cash dries up, the obligations remain. That's why owners focus on recurring revenue, ticket sales, sponsorship deals, and long-term media contracts. That's the steady engine that keeps a league alive. From the player's perspective, expansion looks like a golden opportunity. From the ownership side, it's equity dilution, not operating profit. That difference in interpretation is causing a serious disconnect at the negotiating table. Now here's the number that really shook things up. The union reportedly lowered its demand from 30% of gross revenue to around 27.5%. Publicly, that was framed as a big compromise, a strong gesture of good faith. But when owners ran long-term financial projections on that 27.5% share over a 10-year agreement, the math didn't look pretty. According to those projections, the league could face approximately $460 million in cumulative losses over the life of the deal. That figure sent shockwaves through ownership circles. Put yourself in that boardroom for a second. Imagine being asked to sign a legally binding agreement that, based on internal projections, locks in nearly $500 million in losses. No serious business operator jumps at that deal. It's not about emotion, it's about sustainability. The union is asking for a percentage of gross revenue, not profit, but total revenue before expenses. That's a key difference. Gross revenue doesn't account for operating costs, staffing, marketing, arena expenses, or long-term investments. Owners look at net outcomes. If the end result shows massive projected losses, they're going to hesitate hard. From their perspective, signing off on those numbers would mean committing to years of red ink. And when faced with that scenario, some ownership groups might decide pausing operations makes more financial sense than agreeing to a structure they believe guarantees losses. That's the cold business reality behind all the emotion. This is why negotiations are reportedly so tense. One side sees growing visibility and expansion as proof the pie is bigger. The other side sees accounting sheets that don't support long-term guarantees at the requested percentage. Till those two visions line up, the gap stays wide. And that's the heart of the standoff, not hype, not social media noise, but hard numbers on a spreadsheet. In high-level sports business, the math always speaks loudest. The union wants its percentage of revenue off the very top. Before arena leases get paid, before front office executives collect salaries, before marketing teams and training staff are compensated, and before the league covers major expenses like full-time charter, flights. That's a huge demand when you're talking about a business that has historically operated on thin margins. Under the league's current counteroffer, the ceiling for a star player's total compensation, including revenue-sharing bonuses, could climb to around $1.3 million by 2026 and approach nearly $2 million by the end of the decade. That's not small change. That's a massive leap from today's Supermax figure of roughly $249,000. We're talking about a potential 400% increase in earning power. From the ownership side, that's being framed as a pathway to life-changing money. A historic jump. A chance to build real long-term wealth within a growing league. But union leadership appears to believe it still falls short. They're negotiating like they hold the same leverage as powerhouse leagues with decades of steady profits, even though the financial structures are very different. And here's where emotions start mixing with spreadsheets. Some critics argue the union may be overestimating its leverage based on one explosive year of visibility. Social media buzz is loud. TV ratings spiked. Headlines were everywhere. But sustained profit margins matter more than viral moments when you're locking in a 10-year labor deal. The toughest part of this debate centers on where that recent growth came from. Let's be honest, Caitlin Clark's arrival brought massive attention. She drew sold-out crowds in road arenas. She helped generate record-setting television numbers. She forced major networks to lean in for a season in a way they hadn't before. That impact is real. The question is whether that surge represents a long-term trend or a short-term spike. Owners appear cautious. They want proof the growth can stabilize over multiple seasons before committing to revenue structures that assume permanent expansion. From their perspective, you don't restructure the entire business model off one wave of momentum. Critics of the union argue that, instead of allowing the recent boost to mature and prove itself over 5 years, leadership is pushing to cash in immediately. They believe expansion fees and one-year ratings jumps justify a dramatic shift in revenue sharing right now. Ownership groups see that approach as risky and premature. On the flip side, players and supporters may counter that athletes are the product. They are the ones performing, training, and competing at the highest level. If visibility increases and money flows in, they believe they deserve a stronger share. That's the heart of the standoff. Different interpretations of value and timing. If this negotiation escalates into a full strike, the consequences could be severe. Owners could pause operations and absorb losses through broader corporate portfolios. Major broadcasters could shift summer programming without major disruption. Especially momentum tied to star power can fade quickly in the sports world if seasons disappear. That's the high-risk gamble here. One side believes pushing hard now secures long-term fairness. The other believes pushing too hard too fast could destabilize everything. It's a tense poker game where both sides think they understand the math better than the other. So what's really happening? Is the union misreading one-time expansion fees as steady income? Or are owners understating long-term upside and protecting profits more aggressively than they admit? That's the debate lighting up sports business circles right now. Drop your analytical thoughts below. Is this a case of financial miscalculation or strategic hardball from billionaires who know they can wait longer? Let's break it down. If you want real conversations about the business side of sports, the numbers, the leverage, the strategy, tap subscribe, hit like, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next deep dive. Around here, it's not about headlines. It's about the math and who truly holds the power.